Hi everyone, and welcome to Energetic Conversations. Thank you for joining us today. We are talking about recognizing subtle abuse. Bear with me, I'm just adjusting my phone. And I'm just going to let Daniel in now. Bear with me a second.
Hello, hey Maya, how are you?
Hello. I'm okay, thank you. I'm a little bit tired and just trying to get through that. But apart from that, I'm feeling okay. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. I seem really like it seems really dark in here, but it's not as dark as it's making out to be in the video. But I'm just gonna roll with it. Yeah, I'm doing all right, thank you. I'm doing all right. Um, Better for seeing you and better for being here with you.
Definitely, same here. I think just the sort of alchemy of our energy together just always lifts my spirit and my energy. So thank you always for that.
No, definitely. Likewise, likewise. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And what a topic for today. Recognizing subtle abuse.
I mean,
So yeah, this
every
is
go on.
no, I was gonna say, it's something so prevalent that a lot of people deal with. We've dealt with, on a lot of different levels. So yeah, I'm looking forward to getting into it.
Yeah, same. And I just wanted to say to everyone, honestly, this is like a topic that Daniel and I talk about all the time because it's just such a part of our reality at the moment where we're learning and mastering how to discern how subtle abuse looks. And we constantly come across it in our actual lives. I mean, we get the lesson in our real life and then we talk about it. This is
Mm.
all very much experiential learning. Like we have been through it literally now. So,
Y-
what we
y-
talk about isn't always, it's not like theoretical, it's literally like our lives, and what we've
Yeah,
learned from
no,
just going
yeah,
through these experiences.
no, definitely. Like even recently, like even as of like yesterday and the day before. So yeah,
Literally.
so yeah,
So
but
if you have any questions, oh, is there a bit of a lag between us?
there might be, yeah,
Okay, hopefully that will clear up a little bit.
yeah, perfect. I think we're good now.
Okay. If anyone has any questions, please pop them in the little box. I think it's at the bottom of the screen. There's like a little question mark in a thought comment bubble thing. So please do feel free to ask us any questions. Um, so this is quite funny because we never like really plan that much for these conversations. We just sort of roll into it. So I think maybe it'd be a good idea for us to just talk about what we mean when we say subtle abuse.
Mm,
Would you like to
definitely.
start?
Yeah, for sure. I think when you work with abuse and you work with trauma, I always say, look, it's very easy. If someone punches you in the face, it's very easy to recognize that someone has abused you in some way, shape, or form. It's very easy to see that. Now, when it's overt, for me, it carries its own level of currency and urgency because it's very overt, particularly when it's very visceral and physical. But I think when we look at a lot of the abuse that happens, I think the majority of abuse that actually happens is stuff that you can't see all the time. It's stuff that you don't always know what it is. It's like, it's the everyday abuses that happen, the subtle abuses that happen, And so working in this space, I've really have become a lot more um, aware and have really worked on, honing in and upskilling and being able to recognize the subtleties of abuse, the subtleties of distortions, the subtleties of projections and possessions. It's these subtleties, and I think that's where, for instance, Maya and I really do hone in on, and being able to recognize the things that some people may not even consider to be abuse, and being able to highlight it and say, hey, from my perspective, I think that's abusive, or that could be abusive. And so when we talk about subtle abuses, it's the ways in which people engage with us, the things that they do, the thing they may say in passing, they may, it may be said with a smile, it may be said, by someone who loves you, or says they love you, or says they like you, or, there are things that are kind of covert and you don't always necessarily know what's going on, but somewhere deep inside you feel it. And I think that is oftentimes the case. Like, this has made us very numb to abuse. And so I think it's hard to stay in your body sometimes and kind of pinpoint what you're feeling, because so much of our world is about distracting us from and taking us outside of our body. But our body is a great barometer, for being able to recognize abuse, because the body knows what's going on. And I've been in so many situations where people have been like, "Oh, Daniel, like, it's not that big of a deal. It's not that deep. It's not," even recently, when people are saying like, "Oh, it's not that serious." But my body is telling me, no, it is. It is. And I know it is. But like here, other people will try and tell me that it's not, and so listen to your body. And that's why it's so important to stay in your body, and like I said, so much of our world tries to get us out of that, but stay in your body. The body knows. Your body knows what's going on. So I think that's how I'll check in and open. How about yourself, Maya?
Yeah, I love that. I love what you've said, especially about the body. Always listen to your body and have practices to really check into your body. And I also wanted to make two more points. One is that it's really, a lot of us carry a lot of trauma, and I know for me, I have CPTSD, and so it's really important to work through some of those traumas so that you do know the difference between when someone is abusing you and when it's like a trauma reaction. Because I know for me, I have what people would call overreacted or found something triggering when actually that particular thing might not have been abuse. But I had to work through my nervous system and heal my nervous system to then kind of start recognizing, okay, this is a trauma response, but then this is abuse. Because I think what I see a lot out there is people also thinking they're going through abuse. And they could be, but some people might be reacting from a traumatized place and not being able to see like the true clear situation. So I think I would always say for anyone watching, like, always do the nervous system work as well, so that your body is like the clearest barometer for like what is abuse and what is coming from past triggers and activations. And the other thing I want to say is that when we talk about recognizing subtle abuse, we are also potentially carrying out subtle abuse. So there's also like these things to check in ourselves, like, are we actually holding ourselves accountable for, like, are we doing this or are we doing that? Because it's not just always a one-sided thing. So yeah, I just wanted to say that before going into my rendition of what subtle abuse is. And I agree. I think I've been through so much subtle abuse that, like, I feel like one day I need to write a book on this, because it's like, it's like you said, it's like when it's not like someone punching you in the face where you could actively go, they've just punched me in the face, I've got like a broken nose, a bruise, whatever. It's like very subtle, like energetic warfare where you feel like, it's like that person could be saying like, oh, why are you making such a big deal? Or I love you. But your body, like you said, is reacting. It's like contracting. It feels really uncomfortable. It feels like sad or angry, or, it's kind of going into like a very different state to what this person is saying. And there's like a discrepancy between what the person is saying and your body. And then that's when we get into like gaslighting territory as well, because, they could say, oh, well, I only said it because I love you, but your body is not expanding in the way that it would if it was truly love. And there are ways to give feedback to people in a loving way, and that's very different from abuse. So for example, if you had hurt me, there would be a way for me to say, like, to you, you've hurt me, and in a loving way, I could say it to you like, I just want to say you've hurt me, and it would be a very clear energy. But if I was to abuse you, the energy would be, you would feel it like I was not being loving, that I was just lashing out at you. I don't know how to describe it, but it's like the energetic impact of like how it feels in your body. And okay, one example I have is that like I said in the last IG Live, my granddad has always been very abusive towards me. And my family has always said it's because he loves you. That's why he says he hates you, because he loves you. And so in my mind, I started equating love with hate, because this guy was actively saying to me, I hate you, and things like that. And saying, you don't listen to me, that's why I hate you. And telling other people this as well. But then the rest of my family were like, oh no, that's just how he is. That's just how he is. He loves you. You know, that's just his personality. And I'm like, okay, so I feel like so like energetically beaten up. I like feel so drained when I'm around him. I feel so hurt. I'm crying, right? But you're saying that's love. And so I now have equated love with abuse. And so every relationship I have from then on, especially with men, are abusive relationships, because I've been told that's love. And so like, I might not have been physically punched, but I was energetically punched by this behavior. And that wasn't even that subtle, but people can do it on way more subtle levels. And I guess, yeah, we could give more examples as we go along, but yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I just had, well, thank you for sharing that firstly, Maya. And, you know, I know you shared that on the last live, and obviously you're my friend. And so I know a lot of, you know, what you've gone through. And so that's very top tier, like very, very small to the very big iceberg of abuse that you've encountered, particularly with your family. But I mean, even just 2 days ago, I got a Facebook message and an email from someone who I would consider to be a friend of mine, who we've been friends for years. And, you know, I get a message from them kind of like out of the blue. You know, over the past 2 years, particularly, we've kind of messaged back and forth. You know, I've gone through a lot over the past few years. You know, I was very active within 2020's iteration of Black Lives Matter movement. And, you know, was the opening speaker for the protest here in Bristol. And I've been doing a lot of work. You know, I've been divesting from whiteness. I've been divesting from a lot of toxicity and a lot of, you know, different dynamics that just I have found to be abusive and just aren't good for my well-being, my general well-being, even with my family, you know, and friends that I have. So, but me and this person have been cool. And I've, you know, I mean, you know, he would message me. I think he messaged me last year, and I took maybe a few months to get back to him. And I even said then, like, you know, look, thank you for your message. You know, I've been thinking about you. I've been going through a lot, you know, as many people are. And so, yeah, thank you for reaching out. And I, you know, with a kiss, you know, because, you know, that's my boy. And then a couple of days ago, I get this message from him on Facebook that I didn't read because last week I was going away camping. And so I left it and then came back to an email from him as well. And the email was just, he had literally sent everything he sent the Facebook message in the email. And I showed it to Maya, so she's here to corroborate with this story. It was a dissertation. I mean, the message was ridiculously long. I mean, crazy long. And the whole email was it started off saying, hey, Daniel, you know, I hope you're well. I miss seeing you. I miss being around you. I'd like to challenge you on things you've said on your podcast and things you've said in social media posts and stuff like that. And then it was literally just a barrage of things that were just basically discrediting the things I had said. And it's like, I'm not sure what outcome you want from this. Like, you're saying you're doing this in love. You say that you want to connect. You say that you miss me. Yet everything you're doing is about discrediting everything that I've gone through. And nowhere during this past 2 or 3 years have you ever said, hey, Daniel, just checking in to see how you are. You've not done any of that. Even when I've said I've been going through a lot, you've never responded with, oh, I hear you, or you've always just ignored that part of any response I've had with you over the past two years particularly. But yet you're going to spend a bunch of time and energy discrediting my experiences and discrediting what I'm going through. And this is a white man, just so everyone knows. I think that helps with context. This is a white man. Yeah. And a white man who I didn't actually even like kick out of my life. Like, I was just like, as far as we were concerned, I thought we were cool. Like, you know, it's all good. This is not someone who I've been like, I don't want to speak to you anymore or anything like that. We've been fine. And literally 2 days ago, I get an email from him basically trying to discredit everything that I've really have been speaking about and talking about over the past 2 years, particularly racial abuse, and racism. And so for me, it's like, that's not love. And I find this email incredibly abusive. And not only did you send it to Facebook, but then you also sent it to my professional email. You have my personal email, but anyway, you sent it to my professional email. And first of all, what do you think the outcome of this is going to be? And secondly, like, this is abusive. Like, this is abuse. And you said that you love me. I mean, he didn't say I love me, but he said that, you said that you missed me. You say that you care about me. But everything after that was about discrediting my entire my life experience, but particularly the things that I've shared over the past 2 years. That is abusive. Like, that is abuse. Like, and particularly we have to be aware of also the racial dynamics that are going on there as well. Like, that is also a thing. And so, like, this is abusive, and this is someone who's my friend. Like, or at least was. I don't even know where we are right now. And so this is also coming to me out of the blue, because I'm like, bro, where's this even coming from? And so, but this is the type of stuff that Maya and I get, like, from friends, from family members. Like, it's tough because, Maya and I, we're people who talk about abuse, the abuse that we've been through and the abuse that we see. And we don't, and it's so interesting about abuse, because I have found this particularly in my family. Like, people will rally around the abuser in a way that is so, honestly, as if their life depends on it. They will rally around the abuser, even if they've been abused by that person too. They will rally around this person. They will protect the abuser at all costs. Mm-hmm. But the person calling out the abuse, they will attack that person. Daniel, you're the problem. This is not as deep as you think it is. You're always talking about abuse and trauma. And, I get that you're living unapologetically in your life right now, but you don't need to go around saying all this stuff. And it's just barrage after barrage of attacking the person calling out the abuse. But in doing so, continuing to protect the abuser. The abuser will be right in the same room. They won't say anything to them. Won't say anything to the abuser. Yeah. Nothing. But the person calling out the abuse, they'll get them. And that's the story of my life. And it's the story of Maya's life. It's literally, this is what we go through, currently going through right now. And so even getting up on this live, I'm telling you, like, we don't get the full support of everyone around us. We don't get the full support of our family. We don't get the full support of people around us, because there are people who would rather us not speak about certain things, because they want to protect their own world of fantasy, really. Because if you start picking out, and calling out the abuse that's going on, they have to start looking at that, and they don't want to. They'd rather ignore that. So they'll protect the abuser and then attack the person that's abusing them, because they're a threat to their lifestyle that they've created for themselves.
100%. Before I comment more on what you've just said, the internet on your end just keeps, it's a little bit...
choppy?
a little bit choppy. It's all right for the most part, but it sometimes it just keeps going out a bit. But if there's nothing we can do, then what do we do? Oh, frozen again. Sorry, everyone, just bear with us a second. Just trying to get a better internet connection for Daniel.
Cool.
Hello?
So, yeah, 4G is definitely going to make it worse.
We'll just keep going, and I agree with everything you've said. I think that's the thing. It's like everyone will rally around the abuser, because their lives have been created and their identity have been created around certain paradigms that if you unravel that thread, they have to look at their abuse not just from this person, but from their partner, from their workplace. Recognizing abuse in one area can often lead you to have to recognize abuse in every single area of your life. And it requires a lot of transformation. It requires losing a hell of a lot of people. It requires like rebuilding your life. Once you start recognizing and calling out abuse, that is no small task, because people aren't going to like it. People aren't going to like you anymore. And so you lose a lot, but you also gain your liberation. You gain people who really give a shit about you. You gain the true you, you gain clarity, and you get in more alignment with who you are. So it can feel like a risk at the time. But at the end of the day, for me, when I started calling out abuse, I was like, well, I can either live like this and like live trapped in this hell that is clearly not working for me because I feel so stressed. Everything just feels so dark, so terrible. Or I can risk losing this reality and God knows what the other one looks like, but it's got to be better than this one. And it really, really was. Like the peace and tranquility I feel on a day-to-day basis. Yeah, I don't talk to like most people that I used to talk to, including half of my family members. Like I lost about 20 friends in 2020 because of all the race dynamics that were happening. But I have now people that I know I can trust. And even in my family, there are people that I know I can trust. And they might be less, but that doesn't mean that's a bad thing. It was actually worse before. So yeah, I agree with you, but it's not been an easy journey for either of us, and it's still happening. So thank you for sharing that experience. And I wanted to share like another experience, which was possibly even more subtle, which happened to me, where I share, anyone who follows me on Instagram, you know I share a lot on my stories. And I share deliberately and intentionally. It's to help expand people's consciousness, their awareness. It's to make people think. It's to inspire people. In this, I make conscious choices to share personal details, but it's very much a fraction of who I am. It's not even remotely like, it's literally the tip of the iceberg. But what happens is people think that they know me or that they have entitlement or access to me in a way that I don't, that's not true. So basically someone messaged me the other day because I posted something that they really resonated with. And the thing that I posted was that I'm not going to limit myself to just dating men anymore. And this is a whole other conversation that we're going to go into another time. That's like a different thing. But this person had responded to that very strongly. And then we started talking, and she sounded like a really interesting person, and she is an interesting person. But she was sharing a lot with me when the questions I had asked her were very specific. I didn't want to know or hold personal details. I'm not here for that. I'm not free. I'm not giving out free counseling or support. And I wasn't oversharing anything about me. I was literally just sharing like factual based things and a bit of support for this person. But this person kept oversharing, and then at some point I had to say, like, you know, I just want to say that, like, in no uncertain terms, I just said, you know, I'd rather we sort of kept it quite boundaried, because I felt like it was very intense. This person was connecting with me quite intensely, but they'd made assumptions about the level of connection that I wanted. So they were telling me such intimate things, but I did not ask for that, and I did not want to hold that. And so I ended up saying, you know, I appreciate that you want to connect, and you know, it's great that you feel comfortable with me, but like, I would rather that we don't share like really, really deep personal details, because essentially she knows me from Instagram. I don't know who this person is, and also I never signed up for like holding this. And this person responded by, on one hand, saying, yeah, thank you for sharing that with me, and thank you for being congruent. And then like giving me like a sort of parable from their religion about how, like kind of saying that there's always room in the village for more. And I was like, you haven't respected what I've said at all. Like, I know there's room in the village for more, but it felt very manipulative. It felt like using spiritual parables to manipulate me into like opening up more my like access to me, you know. And then I had to put my boundaries down again. And that's when, you know, subtle abuse is going on. If you put your boundaries down once, and then someone responds and you're feeling it in your body, you're like, oh, they didn't catch that, they didn't hold that. Then you have to put your boundaries down again. But no one is being overtly nasty. No one is doing anything like that. In fact, if anything, this person was complimenting me. And that's another form. Watch out, people, because with subtle abuse, it doesn't look like always like negative, like sideways negative comment. It can be, with this person, it was like, you're great, you're such a beautiful soul inside and out. Meanwhile, not asking me anything about my life, but telling me everything about theirs and then saying, thank you for listening. And I was like, hang on a sec, I never asked you to share any of this, so I haven't agreed to listen. But you're manipulating me into it by complimenting me and putting me on a pedestal, like, oh, I'm so honored that I get to speak to you. Oh, I'm so grateful. And it's like, I don't think you're listening to what I'm saying, and I don't feel respected at all. And so I had to put my boundaries down again and again, and at the end I was like, I just don't want to speak to this person, because if this is how it is before I've even it happened within 24, 48 hours. I felt so bulldozed in my boundaries. And this is someone that, was claiming to really appreciate me and my work. And so this is how subtle energy dynamics happen too when it comes to abuse. It doesn't just look like negging or digs. It can look like someone for me, I've always experienced people thinking they're very, because I understand people a lot. I've had a lot of training in kind of mental health, in counseling and hypnotherapy, but also that's the person I am. I often find that when I connect with people, and they are not used to being understood to that level, which is a sad reflection on our society, because everyone should feel understood on that level. But the sad fact is because one person comes along that understands them, they feel like, oh, I can tell everything to this person, not reading at all that this person doesn't want to know all of these things. This person has their own life. This person has their own stuff to deal with. This person isn't asking you for your deepest, darkest secrets. It's just like a tirade, a tsunami of emotional, it does feel like emotional abuse. It does. It feels like just being trampled all over. And I understand that these people are very hurt. They're very traumatized. They don't have a lot of people to talk to. But that does not give you a green card to go and abuse other people under the guise of, I feel very safe with you. I feel like I can just share anything with you. That's how they've always got me. In the past, they've always got me like that. Like, oh, I feel like I feel really safe with you. I feel like I can't share this with anyone else. Oh, that used to get me every time. I used to be like, oh my God, I feel so special. That is exactly, people, please listen to this. That is exactly how they get you, especially if you're highly sensitive, if you're empathic, if you care about humanity. It's being empathic has to come with boundaries, because people smell it like bees to honey, I'm telling you, or flies to shit, whatever metaphor it is. People can see you a mile off, and that's why having really firm boundaries is so incredibly important. That's just yet another example. I'm sure there's plenty more, but I'll let you share more.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think that's a really good example. I mean, there's so many different types of abuses in that example. So, I mean, you have spiritual abuse, you have emotional abuse. I mean, mental abuse as well, because there was definitely gaslighting. I mean, obviously Maya has shared with you all a bit of it. Obviously Maya and I talk offline, and she shared with me that it in totality.
Yeah.
There's so many different abuses in that. But again, it's all under the guise of being loving, kind, spiritual, and religious.
Yeah.
And that was the part for me that just really, my tolerance for religious and spiritual abuse is just, it's negative. It's in the negatives. It's in the negatives. So when she gave you that parable about after you had given her your boundary of look, I'm not really wanting to connect in this way. I'm at capacity right now. Then her saying, look, I understand you. And then giving you the parable of there's always room in the village for more. That is so duplicitous.
Yeah.
And but this is it. These are the subtle abuses. That was this abuse at such a deep level.
Yeah.
I think honestly, and people listening to that, I don't think not everyone will necessarily get how deep that actually is. That is super deep.
Well, it hits you on a moral level, because if I was more vulnerable, and if I hadn't have worked through all of this abuse nonsense in my life, I would be like, oh my God, I'm not being spiritual because this Guru Nanak had done this, or this person had done this, or Jesus has done this, and I'm not being like this very spiritual person. So I need to let you in because you're telling me that's what if I don't do this, if I don't let you into my life, I'm not being godly. that's fucking spiritual abuse. And I just want to say as well, at the same time this person was pretending to be, or being, that I guess they are spiritual in some ways, they were deep in my Instagram liking selfies of me. So I felt incredibly uncomfortable because I was like, this doesn't feel entirely spiritual. This feels sexual. This feels like you're using spirituality to get an in, because I can see what you're doing and you're like deep in my photos right now. Like, it just felt really, I feel creeped out now talking about it, actually.
No, because your boundaries were breached.
Yeah.
Your boundaries were breached. And this also ties into like how this happens when people date as well, or like when people are in like kind of like non-platonic dynamics or non-platonic relationships. This stuff happens all the time. And so being aware of this and the ways in which people are breaching your boundaries, are coercing you, and the way that people are, you know, love bombing you, flattering you, but then flattering you to get what they want.
Yeah.
You know, honestly, like I know many of us out there have experienced that. Like it's you have to be so clued in to what's going on and the dynamics, the energetic dynamics of what's going on. Because you know, oftentimes we're getting manipulated in situations, and you have to check in with yourself. How do I feel? What have I articulated? And are they respecting what I have shared with them? You know, in terms of my boundaries. If some people are trying to coerce you, if you shared your boundaries and people are still trying, that's abuse. That is abuse. People, it's abuse. I honestly, I at this point, I don't care. I would die on this hill. It's abuse, and people may not see it as that. And again, this is where people start going, "Oh, Daniel, you're taking it too seriously." No, that's abuse. It is abuse. If I tell you a boundary and you encroach upon that boundary, that is abusive.
Exactly.
Full stop. If I say I don't want to have sex with you, but you still try to have sex with me, that is abuse.
Yes.
That is abuse. Full stop. Next paragraph.
Yeah.
That's it. So again, we have to be so adamant about that. And again, sometimes, you know, you hear people like Maya and I talk about this. And again, a knee-jerk reaction for some people may be like, oh, they're going overboard. I hear that. I get that. But I think already allow yourself to sit with that for a little bit. You know, if you're someone struggling to piece that together or already allowing it to concretize, just sit with it for a bit. Because when you give a boundary, that needs to be respected. And if it's, you know, if it's breached in any way, whether it's in a sexual dynamic, a family dynamic, a friend dynamic, a work dynamic, then that is abuse, and you have been abused. And it doesn't make this person a terrible person and they're like the most evil person in the world. I'm not saying all of that. I don't know. But I'm telling you, what you have experienced is abuse.
Yeah, 100%. I'm so glad you said that, and because I think when people see the word abuse, they automatically think, you know, like, oh, like the Catholic Church, like abuse, you know, like very serious allegations of abuse, and that is abuse. But also, abuse is the microscopic. How do you think we get to the macro? We get to the macro by the micro. It's because of all these paper cuts. It's because of what we allow into our personal daily lives. And I think I'm so glad that we're talking about these everyday online interactions or family interactions. You know, God, the amount of family things, just to touch on family stuff, like, I had something recently where, I mean, my family have been, especially my dad's side, they've been abusive my whole life. And I put some very firm boundaries down. Ironically, because one of my family members, my aunt, kept coming onto my Instagram post when I was talking about abuse and telling me and like having a go at me and like trolling me online, saying like, you haven't asked the family to share these things and you haven't done this. And I wasn't even sharing the in-depth details. I was just saying the word abuse. And she was like getting very, very upset about it. And then like sort of then abusing me online in front of everyone and being like, you know, I can't believe you've said this. And I wasn't giving any names, any personal details, anything like that. And so in the end, I had to block her. And I actually ended up stopping talking to her because she kept asking me not to mention abuse. And I thought, well, that's abuse in itself because I'm not allowed to talk about what I've gone through. For who? For who does this benefit? Like you want to feel comfortable yourself. You're putting yourself above me. That's abuse. And you're saying it's love. And she kept saying, we're saying this because we love you, me and your uncle. We'd rather you don't say abuse at the book launch, which Daniel hosted. Please don't mention abuse. Like, we're just saying this because we love you. because people will get really alarmed if you use the word abuse. And I just said to her, you don't have to come, but I am not at this stage in my life where I'm going to stop talking about abuse. And so fast forward 2 years, and I don't talk to these people at this point in time. And they all had a gathering because their daughter was getting engaged. And I love their daughter, and I have no qualms with their daughter. So that doesn't impact my relationship with her. But I decided not to attend this event where all of my family were going to be. And I said no. And I said it very graciously. I wasn't abusive at all. I just said, it's not the right thing for me to do. But the levels of I got text messages from people. On one hand, they were being very loving, like, oh, I love you and I miss you and I just want to see you. Please come, please come. And I was like, that's abusive because you don't even care about the reason why I'm not coming. You just want me to put a plaster. I'm the plaster on this huge gaping wound. So if I turn up to this party, you can all pretend everything's okay. So that was one text message I got. And then the other text message was from this granddad of mine who I've now blocked. And he was like, come to your cousin's engagement. If you don't come, you'll be alone on this earth. Everyone's willing to forgive you. Everyone's willing to forgive me. Just forget everything. Forget everything. And I'm like, hang on, as my abuser, you don't have the right to tell me any of this. Firstly, you're abusing me by saying I'll be alone on this earth. Why the fuck are you threatening me? Why the fuck are you threatening me to come to a party? What is wrong with you? Secondly, what was the other thing? They're willing to forgive you. So because I've been abused and I've put my boundaries down and I don't talk to them, they're willing to forgive me for putting boundaries down, for them abusing me. How does that make sense? And thirdly, forget everything. So if I went out and I sexually harassed someone and I was like, just forget it. Just forget it. Forget what I did. As the abuser, you don't have the right to say to someone that you've abused, forget everything. It doesn't matter what the abuse is. You just don't have the right. And so that happened to me 3 weeks ago. This shit's still happening to Daniel and I all the time. That's why we feel so strongly about it. The more you put boundaries down, the more the people who benefited from you not having those boundaries are going to get fucked off. And they're going to try and keep that, bulldozing those boundaries. And so that's when you have to double down. And you don't have to be an asshole. We're not abusers. So we're not people that are going to be, I would never stoop to a level of being malicious to anyone. It's not my nature. It would harm me more than it would even harm them, or just as much. So I never say oh, well, you're this or you're that. I just say, I'm not coming. It's not good for me. And some of these people act like you punched them in the face just because you've put a boundary down, because they're so used to extracting from your life force, your energy. You are the linchpin for them thinking that everything's okay. If I came to that party, they could all play happy families. Because I wasn't there, they all had to sit in whatever shit that they sat in. Because my absence was spoke very loudly. And I wanted that. I was like, yeah, let it speak loudly. I've been uncomfortable my whole life. I've shut up for all of you. You feel uncomfortable for once. You sit in your discomfort. It's like handing it back to them, basically. So yeah.
Thanks for sharing, Maya. Thanks for sharing. I mean, those are some great examples. It happens so frequently. I mean, look, I'm sure we'll get into this on another live or when I fucking write a book, because but even my family dynamics, it's just the level of gaslighting, the level of abuse, the level of people trying to act like everything's okay when it so clearly is not.
Yeah.
Again, and this is, and I really want to drive home the point of being the truth teller. The truth teller often, it can be a very dangerous and harmful person and place and position to be in. Maya and I are truth tellers. That's the role that I think we play just in our life in general, particularly in this work. And that work can be in our friends, with our families, just in society in general. But it's not for the faint of heart. I understand why people don't tell the truth sometimes, because it's you do get a target on your back sometimes, because people want to live in the reality that they have created for themselves. And oftentimes people trauma bond. People want to protect the abuser. People want to live a life that, even if it's full of abuse, they want to live for the payoff. Sometimes the payoff is having a family. If you didn't have a family, then having a family becomes very important. And if someone around in the family, like whether you're a brother, sister, cousin, aunt, uncle, if someone in the family is starting to point out abuse, well, that's a threat to the family unit. And all you want and all that person wants is a family. But then someone's around starting talking about trauma and abuse, and this person did that, and then you're just like, no, you can't. I need the family. I need this family. I need this family to stay. And I'm telling you, they will protect the abuser. They will know about the abuse. You can tell them the abuse. You can send an email, which I've done, telling them the abuse. And still they will abuse you and protect the abuser. Still, not everyone, but there will be people in the dynamic, yes, that will protect the abuser. Now let the abuser come. Like I said earlier, let the abuser be in the room. No one's going to say anything. I promise you. Most people were not going to say anything. They will be face to face with the abuser, having lunch with them, and they will not say a damn thing to the abuser. Let me walk in the fucking room and just sit down, and it's a fucking issue. It's a fucking issue, because just the mere presence is a threat. Because here's someone with the potential to blow our cover. Yeah. Here's someone with the potential for me to have to look at myself and the dynamics that I have played into my entire life. Yeah. So then it becomes one of those things, when people talk about, when Maya talks about like having to distance herself from the family, it's for her own well-being. Literally. It's for living her own well-being, because even if Maya just showed up in her family and said nothing and just sat there with her legs crossed, I'm telling you, it would all go off. It would all pop off. It has, where I've said nothing, yeah. Literally. So there comes a point when I think when you do this work and you start recognizing abuse, that you say, look, it's for everyone's benefit. Because when you realize that some people just want to live in that abusive dynamic, well then look, it's not beneficial for them for me to be around. And it's not beneficial for me, because if I'm around, like, I'm just going to get abused. And like they don't want to leave the abusive dynamic. I have, like, just my mere presence mirrors the abusive dynamic. So who's going to win here? So that's when it's like, look, it's just best for all parties that I don't come to this event or whatever it may be. And so it's not that, like, you're trying to just like cut everyone off. It's not about that. I think it's a very sophomoric way of looking at this, is the fact that you're trying to protect your own well-being as well as the well-being of everyone involved. But, people just want you to be abused, and people want to be able to abuse you without you saying anything. And that's how a lot of people operate, particularly in family dynamics. Yeah, everything you just said, this is what we've learned, sadly. Some people want to stay where they're at, and then it's actually harmful to them for you to even be there, and it's harmful for you. And I think what you brought up is such an important point that I want to elaborate on. Is I think one very clear turning point I had when recognizing abuse is realizing that I can't fix the abuser, and to recognize that this is where someone's at, especially if it's like family members or friends. This is where you're at. I don't want anything to do with it, so I'm withdrawing my life force and energy. I'm starving this abusive situation of its life force, but I may never be able to fix you from your abusive, manipulative ways. And in a sense, I don't want to anymore, because I think just me extracting myself does starve the abusive energy and life force of that situation. And the thing is, I've noticed is when I started putting boundaries down, I noticed that other people started putting boundaries down in the family around me. And so that was how the ripple effect came about. But just recognizing, okay, this person may not change, this company may not change, this family member may not change. I could either try and fight it, which, trust me, we have done. We have tried all of the time. We've emailed people, we've spoken to people, we've tried to put our point across. But if they are committed to living in their little reality, which Daniel said, they just want to live in that comfortable family unit that they've created, then let them. But withdraw your life force. You don't need to add fuel to the fire. You withdrawing actually withdraws that whole abusive dynamic.
you know, so never, one of the things I used to think was, oh, I have to fight everything. I have to for me to be of service, I have to put all of my energy into fighting battles like this. And I realized I can't. Those battles are not for me to fight. My battle is for me to cut off toxic connections, pour that energy into, like this, educating people from my own experience, teaching people or inspiring people from who are willing to listen, willing and open to like hearing about this. And then just go and live my life and like do my work, which is all about helping people anyway. So I don't want to be fighting like every single person who's committed to abusing me or misunderstanding me. Because when you're fighting against them, they are literally sucking your life force out of you. They don't care about you being right or wrong. They want your energy and your life force. That's why it's so draining after you've had these interactions with people. You just feel like shit. Because even though you might have been right the whole time, that's not what they were. They wanted to weaken your defenses and weaken your life force so that they can extract from you whatever they wanted in the first place. You know, and I think it's our responsibility to recognize that as soon as possible. So with this person who was messaging me on Instagram, I would like, even though it was very annoying to like go through all of that, I was like, wow, I've never been through that to that level where I've been able to master it at that level, because in the past I would have gone further and like actually spoken to them online or given them a bigger chance, whether it was platonic or non-platonic. But this time I was like, oh, hell no. Like after 3 interactions, I was like, oh, no, abuse, like red flags. This is very familiar to me, shut down, you know, and then I can talk about it with you guys. So it hasn't come to nothing. I'm using it now. It's like alchemizing that energy of what I went through to like actually, in case any of you have been through similar situations, to like help bring awareness to that. So there is meaning behind it. And I think it's just about channeling our energy in the best way for us and our mental health and our energy life field, life force, you know, rather than trying to fight people that, you know, obviously if there is abuse going on, like, and there's a way of saying it and there's a way, but you don't have to commit your whole life to fighting with one person who is committed. You can operate in different ways to challenge that abuse where you are not being depleted from. There's formal grievances, there's educating people around you about it, there's going online and talking about it. There are different ways to address abuse rather than just talking to the abuser and just like fighting maybe sometimes a lost battle, you know?
Definitely. And like you said, removing yourself from the situation, that's a great way to combat abuse, you know? The place I'm at right now, like, if people want to live in toxic dynamics and abusive dynamics, go ahead. Honestly, go ahead, live your life. Like, I think people overestimate how much Maya and I care about that type of stuff. Like, I think people have this perception that we're out here trying to be like, you need to leave this relationship, you need to do this, you need to do that. People, one thing Maya and I do not do and will not do is tell people how to live their life and what to do. We're here and talking about what we do, what we've been through, what has been our experience, both personally and professionally. These are things that we do for ourselves. Yeah. Nowhere have we ever, and nor will we, tell people what they need to do in their lives or how they need to live their life. If you want to be in an abusive dynamic, an abusive relationship, abusive friendship, abusive work relationship, go ahead. You're in it, not me. You are in it, not me. I know what that's like, and I choose to live a different way, and I choose to respond to things differently. But if that's your choice, brother, sister, non-binary family member, live your life. Live your life. You know what I'm saying? Because, like, again, that's also not a good use of energy. So, like, energetic conversations isn't about, like, saving people. Like, oh, we got to save this person. We got to save that person. No, it's not. Like, we're out here trying to live our best life and be free from abuse and to heal in our own way. And if people are inspired by that, if people can learn from that, be educated by that, then that's a beautiful thing. That's amazing. But if ultimately you choose to stay in your abusive relationships and dynamics, well, that's the choice you've chosen. And I respect everyone's choice to live the life that they want. Just don't come over here trying to abuse me. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, just be in your abuse over there. I'll be in my life over here. That's it.
Absolutely. That's it. It's like those times I used to try and rescue everyone. I used to work in domestic abuse. I used to try and rescue people from abusive relationships. And then I was like, this person doesn't want to leave this abusive relationship. So then they're only going to be angry at me, and I'm going to waste my life force and energy trying to get them out of something that they don't want to get out of. So no, like, I don't want to abuse myself on top of everything else by like putting myself in that situation. So I think you're spot on. It's like we are sharing our experiences, and those of you who have joined and who are listening to this later, if you do want to do this work, if it helps you become aware, then great. You know, that's the most we can kind of hope from this. And I think as well, I feel like I feel like often when you put boundaries down or when you say something that could hurt people, people think that it's abusive as well. So I just want to flip it around, because I know that I have, by putting boundaries down and saying no to someone having access to me, I think they have confused that with being abused, because just because they've hurt and it has been painful. You know, it's painful if someone stops you from having access to them, but it's not abuse. If I was abusing someone, I'd be like, you're a dickhead, you're an asshole, I can't, you are such a low life, like blah, blah. That's never my style. I just do not do that. Even if someone like really harms me, I'm not, that's not my style. But like, I think people sometimes call abuse when they've just been hurt by the truth of what someone said, but there hasn't been anything malicious in it. They've just had a boundary put down, or they've had a truth reflected to them. And I think then when they feel like, oh, I've been abused, or I've been like, you know, okay, I'll give an example. When I said no to this engagement, I mean, it caused all sorts of, I knew it was gonna, but like, I had to stay true to myself. But one of my aunts, I was still in that, I visited that area to visit another family member. So I was spotted. This is such a South Asian fucking thing. I was spotted, and then it got back to the hub. And someone there, one of my aunts, was like, I can't believe Maya came to visit this family member, but she didn't come and see us, and she didn't come and see my parents, who were my grandparents. We've done so much for her. And then she started shouting at one of my very close family members about me, and saying like, just getting really, really angry, as though I had like killed her dog or her child or something, or like I'd like abused someone. All I'd done was I just visited somewhere and not informed wider members of my family who were also in that area. I had boundaries. I hadn't maliciously, I hadn't texted anyone. I hadn't been malicious. I hadn't said anything, but I just visited someone else and not informed everyone. But honestly, the amount of anger and rage it brought up, if anyone else was listening to this woman, they'd think that I had like done something really, really horrible and toxic. And I think that's where it got distorted. It's like when you put boundaries down, people can act like you have burned their house down, you know? And I think just watch out for that. And just what I have found is just to kind of, I found that talking to people like Daniel and like close friends and just validating, you know, in those moments where I may question, like, have I done something wrong? Have I burnt down the house? You just need a close group of people around you going, no, this is the truth of what's happened. Like, we can reflect that, we can validate that. If we need to look at text messages, we can do that, you know, because we don't have to do this alone. I think that's another really key thing. Like Daniel and I certainly don't do it alone. And we have close family, close friends who we can talk to about it, and family, certain family members. So none of us have to do this alone.
No, definitely, 100%. You know, and also too, like we also check in with each other if we think that we have maybe potentially breached someone else's boundaries and abused someone else. Like, yeah. You know, I'll go to Maya. You know, if I'm engaging with someone online and I feel like I breached someone's boundaries, you know, I'll go to Maya and I'll read it out and it's like, hey, like, do you think that I breached this person's boundaries? Because if so, I'm going to go and apologize, and I'm going to go and say, hey, like, sorry, I feel like I breached your boundaries. You know, I apologize for that. You know, and funny enough, even after Maya talked about her experience that she had this week or last week, I think it was this week, with the person online about them oversharing. I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago, it may have been that evening, I was sending someone a message on Instagram, and I was kind of like just responding to their messages and then kind of just sharing about like my trip to Dartmoor that I was just on and da-da-da-da-da. And then I sent it and then I unsent it because I was like, actually, this person didn't ask how I was doing. This person I actually asked very specific questions, and here I am just being like, oh, I've had this great time in Dartmoor. I've had like, it's been so great. And it was like this like minute long like voice note, and I was just like, this person didn't ask for that, and I don't have that type of relationship with this person for me to do that. You know, if it was Maya, that's different. Like that's my friend. You know, like I'm gonna fill her in. But this is someone we don't have that type of dynamic. We don't. And I was oversharing. I literally was oversharing because I kind of like this person, but I was started oversharing, and I was like, okay, let me unsend that, because it's like, no, I'm breaching this person's boundaries. I'm offloading onto this person. And yeah, like, I'm going to bring that back, and so we have to do it as well. It's not just like, again, like Maya said earlier on, it's not one-sided. Maya and I, we have to check ourselves to make sure that we're not doing it. So yeah.
Yeah, it's just a constant like dance of holding ourselves accountable and being self-aware, and also noticing when other people are not holding themselves accountable and not self-aware, and they're just like bulldozing your boundaries. And there's no perfect way to be. I think it's just a constant process. And I'm sure I have overshared with people that didn't ask, and or done or pushed someone's boundaries because I wanted something. In fact, I know I've done that. I think I've done that in non-platonic relationships, especially when I was acting out of trauma. I hold my hands up and say, if they tried to put a boundary down, it took me a while because I just was in so much shame and humiliation and rejection. I took it as like, oh my God, you're rejecting me. Like, and all of my like body dysmorphia, my trauma, like everything came up. And I do believe that I was not fair to those people. Like in the whole of it, like they could have been abusive too. So it's always like a dance, like we're not completely infallible, or so I think it's just watching, like, has this person asked, would I want this to be done to me? How does my body feel? Am I feeling comfortable right now? Like all of those little subtle things. And I think the more we do nervous system practices to like calm our nervous system down, the more we do like embodied practices, rather than trying to spiritually bypass like our body and the discomfort in our body, going inward into the body and like feeling around, like, does my stomach feel tense? Why does my stomach feel tense? Do I feel a bit, sometimes I'm like, ooh, I feel a bit sick. It's because I might be repulsed by someone doing something, and my body is literally feeling sick. Or I often used to get headaches because, like, the third eye, and you've taken a lot of information there. When I was living with my dad and stepmom and everything, I used to get headaches, I'm telling you, like all the fucking time, because I was taking in so much shit. And I was taking in all this information of abuse, lying. I could tell whatever was going on, but I couldn't say anything because they were abusing me, and I was a child, and I the dynamic, I wasn't empowered, and if I had said something, I was just always shut down. So I just kept getting headaches all the time. And now I notice I get less headaches, and when I do get them, I'm like, oh, what is going on here? What energy is someone throwing at me that they're not owning in themselves, and they're unconsciously like just slapping it onto me? And I think that's the importance of owning who we are and owning our emotions, because then you're not bleeding it and leaking it onto other people. That's the importance of doing like shadow work, energy work, embodiment work. It's so that you are fully aligned, you've integrated all of those shadows, those unconscious parts of you, so that they're not leaking out onto other people.
100%. So beautifully said. It's take responsibility for your energy.
Yeah.
I've been living in my family home for the past 2 years. I haven't had the amount of eye infections, the amount of like times I've been in the hospital, the amount of times I've had like all these different physical manifestations of trauma and abuse over the past 2.5 years. I mean, Maya knows, but like, I mean, and stuff I'm even dealing with now. I mean, I was in Oakland last month. I was in the hospital right before I got to Oakland with an eye infection, like literally the worst eye infection I've ever had in my life. Like this is what, when you're in abusive energy, when you're around people who don't take responsibility for their energy, who are gaslighting you, who aren't true to themselves, people who are living double lives. That's really key right there.
Yeah.
People who are living double lives, being around that energy is very, very toxic and non-beneficial. And I have lived in that energy for so much of my life, being around people who live double lives, because there's a duplicitous energy that you are just swimming in.
Yeah.
And for those who are sensitive, you will sometimes get physical manifestations, you know? And I'm someone who is, and I'm telling you, it's like, it's rough on the body physically to be around that. So it's another reason why you sometimes have to distance yourself from people, because it's like, look, the amount of stuff that I've been in, I want to stop being in the fucking hospital for being around this toxic energy, you know? And it's tough, and it's like, it wears you down. So again, everyone has to do what's best for them to protect their energy. And I've had to learn that, to be honest, the hard way.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, because I've witnessed you on that journey, and it really has been rough. I mean, you've had so many health issues, and it's not a coincidence. It's directly impacted with directly linked to the fact that you live in a situation that there is duplicitous energy, and that there is dense energy that you pick up on, that no one else is talking about. Everyone would rather act like it's not happening. And then there is always a consequence. Your body is the consequence. Your body shows you that, you know, and the same with, we haven't even spoken about work, but with work as well, I know there are so many people out there who go to work, they face duplicitous energy, they face manipulative energy, abusive energy from their co-workers, and then they throughout the day, they just gather all of this like stress and pain in their body, and it just like builds and builds and builds. And, you know, it's not easy to just like quit your job and like go and do something else, but there are little things you could do, which is like withdraw your energy from certain interactions. You know, if you know someone is being duplicitous, manipulative, abusive, withdraw your life force, withdraw your energy. You can be civil, but you don't have to have like a really long conversation. If they start trying to drag things out of you, like personal information, don't give it. You can just say, you know, I'm not ready to talk about that right now. If they push you, they're abusing you. If they keep pushing you, like, oh, well, you know, I know you said this, but like, can you just let me know? And it's like, no, I said what I said. So there are ways that you can like withdraw your life force. Essentially, it's starving the abusive energy of a situation by not enabling it. Just withdraw, put some boundaries down, and see how your life changes. Like see if you can feel more energy in your life. See if you feel more clarity, if things start shifting. Because for me, and I know for you, like we see the impact of these decisions very quickly. They manifest in our lives very quickly. So yeah.
Definitely, 100%. And, you know, to all those out there, you know, again, like Maya said, there's a bit of a dance with this as well. But, you know, to everyone out there, you know, one of the things that I've learned how to do is to respond to people when you feel comfortable and ready to. Yeah. You know, like that's another thing. I think sometimes we feel like because we get a message, we have to respond to it. I think because we carry our phones around so much and everything like that. But I think particularly when you're working through different dynamics, is like take your time, really sit with how you feel, like respond when you have the energy to respond. Like don't respond out of a knee-jerk reaction. Don't respond, you know, in a place where you're feeling low and in dense energy, because you want to be in a good energy, or like a space when you have actual energy to respond, because that's going to be a much better response. You know what I'm saying? Like, so this is another thing I want to throw out there as well.
Yeah, I agree completely. And does anyone have any questions before we wrap up? I don't see any so far, so I hope that you've all enjoyed this conversation. Daniel, is there anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah.
Daniel, I could like literally, I mean, we could have like 10 IG lives, a marathon, and still not get through all of the examples that we got. I mean, we've got bags. I mean, we will probably keep, over time, we will probably keep sharing more, but these felt like the right ones to bring up. And I hope that we've given a variety of different ones so that you can each maybe resonate with something that we've said, because it's not just friendships, it's not just online, it's not just colleagues, it's not just families, it's everywhere. We're swimming in abuse. This country is seething with abuse. I talk about England, but I also refer to Turtle Island, America, Canada, even Australia, like colonial lands, you know, whether the colonizers come from here or they went there. The whole system, the political system, the economic system, it was built on abuse. So of course, the norm is abuse. We always have a joke, like, if otherwise stated, assume abuse. Because it's like most of us have grown up being so abused by the social systems and the economic systems, and we still are, that we get so used to this that it's just normal for us, you know, and then we don't realize we're being abused left, right, and center. So yeah, it's a worthy cause to like liberate yourself, but it's not by any means easy. And I just want to acknowledge that as well. Like it's still taking us time to do that.
Definitely. And sometimes you have to leave the whole fucking country. Like, you know, like you have to do whatever you have to do.
Yeah.
Trust me, whatever you have to do, you got to do, you know. And to Maya's point, I've heard, you know, I've been processing different abuses over the past couple of years, particularly. And I remember like sharing certain abuses with certain family members or people and stuff like that in my life. And people who I know have been abused, not even just like I think they've been abused, I know they've been abused, have been like, oh, I wonder if I've been abused. And I know they have been abused. I know that they've been abused. And so again, this is the dissonance that people can sometimes have with abuse, because like Maya said, we're just swimming in it. Yeah. We're literally just swimming in it. And so it's not us trying to just call everything abuse. It's just saying, no, there's actually a lot of abuse out there that we have just normalized. So I think there's a difference with that, of just trying to like, you know, just whistleblow everything. We're just saying, look, there's actually a lot of abuse out there. And it's about becoming more conscious and more energetically sensitive and aware of the different dynamics that are going on.
Yeah, exactly. And to make the best use of that energy by liberating ourselves. That's what we've been doing. Liberating ourselves from abusive systems, divesting our energy, our life force. You know, like a couple of years ago, we divested from white supremacy. And we said divesting from whiteness, but essentially we meant white supremacy. It didn't mean cutting every white person off, but white people who carried white supremacy and were enacting it upon us, yeah, we divested. That meant we weren't interacting with them all the time. We stopped our interactions. I actually said no to a couple of larger opportunities with white women where I could have been more, like my work could have been more well known, because I knew that I would have to repress myself and my experiences to avoid white fragility. And I couldn't do it. So I said no. There's a lot of shit that happens that we don't always talk about online. And so like there are some sacrifices, but they're always worthwhile because other opportunities came along, you know. And it's not worth selling out your integrity, I feel. That's my opinion. Sometimes people might feel it is. Personally, I don't feel like that. So yeah, it's about pulling your life force back to you, calling yourself home, getting into your energy field, your frequency, and building your energy up. And rather than like wasting or fighting every single form of abuse out there, because I mean, abuse is, you walk out the door and you're abused, like, you know, and it takes a lot of energy, and it's very draining to like just keep like fighting every single cause. That's how I felt. So it's a balance. It's a balance between pointing it out and then not feeling responsible for like fixing every single abuser out there.
Definitely. And to Maya's point, you know, with white supremacy or any system of oppression, those who are being oppressed can also carry that energy too.
Yeah.
So we divested from white supremacy, whiteness, you know, which we, you know, say are intertwined. Like Maya said, we didn't cut off. I personally didn't cut off every white person in my life. Maya didn't do that either. And also too, we also did also not speak to or engage as much with people of color who also are very like integrated in white supremacy and whiteness. So like it was twofold. Like if there were Black or brown people who are so integrated in whiteness, I was like, look, I'm divesting from this. So how can I engage with you if you're so integrated in it? Deep wisdom at some point just becomes common sense. Yeah. It's not even that like it's not even, it's just common sense. It's like I'm divesting from something that you are so adamant about being in and protecting. How is this going to work? So it's not even that, you know, there's any ill will or hatred or anything like that. It's just like, how can two walk together unless they agree, you know? And like, and it doesn't mean to agree on everything, but on one thing, we've got to agree at least to go in the same direction. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's one thing we do have to agree on. And you know, and clearly, you know, many people aren't. So
yeah.
I mean, we could talk about so much. We could talk about so much.
Well, thank you so much, Daniel, for sharing your personal experiences and your wisdom about subtle abuse, because I know there's a lot.
Likewise, Maya, same for you. I know there's a lot there. I mean, this was such a small, such a microcosm of the great macro of abuse that you and I have
Yeah, and I'm sure many of you that are watching, I'm absolutely certain, like we are not alone in this. You know, we just realized, I guess for us, like we just, once you see it, you can't unsee it. It's like taking the red pill, or the, I don't know, is it the red pill? And then you just can't unsee, like every time you're abused. It's like, sometimes I wish I could take the blue pill and be like, oh, I'd rather just be ignorant. But it isn't worth it, because you're not, for me, it was like, I'm not liberated. And if I'm not liberated, I'm not powerful. So, but thank you everyone so much for joining today, and we will see you next week. And yeah, take care. Bye.
See you next week. Have a good one. Later.
Bye.